My experience has been that where I am going, we won't count time through the prism of duration with numbers. Duration, however, will have an impact on reflection. I don't know how I could be an alien because I have never seen a spaceship. What I do know is where we are could be viewed as just such a context, and we are coming into range. Can't tell if it's you or me that should be excited. Contrast to form is the knowledge of good and evil, so glad you made it. All day long they are broken into pieces, forever unobserved by substance. The evidence for alien life for some is a spaceship, for others a god hanging from a pole for our sins. I wonder in that context what a willing slavery to duration could mean to an anticipation for the harvest. If you think of the Mona Lisa, you'll see the sun rising above the horizon of the waters by perspective from a beach, and then a reflection. Where you are heading determines to some extent the sensations involved in looking up while staring through two pillars. When they see from the rainbow lines from 2/3 of each end spinning to AV, we can understand in a way what they are capable of imagining. There are certain things we can't say about elevational sensation because we don't want to encourage them to try too hard, with an eye on certain things. That said, the difference between walking and driving can be for some a development for the velocity of preference, that comes in line with the management of coordinate sensations. Up and down is indeed a final preference, but by the time the choice is made, the determination has been experienced for some time. Human sacrifice is propelled from an aspirational premise to what I could be if you did not exist. In that context, we are experiencing a kind of post-existence. The neural adjustment creates two great dangers for an evolving species of sentient emission. Conceptual value is the arc, and language the loose string that can unravel the secret premise. One danger with monetary symbolism, for example, is that a civilization could find itself spending its time out finding things. A potential of neuronic inverse relation working its way back to a life of instinct and the centering V of aspirational appetite. Almost everyone I know personally has experienced material benefit from my personal capacity to express loyalty, and in that context I never really gave up on anything important. Something gained and something lost. There are some things you can never leave, infinite parts to our progress marked in our memory by something like a totem. I left church with the same sensation as when I left college. I could no longer feel the winds of why I had gone there in the first place. The difference by expectation is that when we leave college we are prepared for something, when we leave church it is a betrayal of allegiances even if the time itself was paid for, and the departure delivered with thanks. The difference between when we were learning things we wanted to know about, and simply just now remembering it. How to Become Great Again, and Ben Sasse is out complaining about Peter Pan's concept of Neverland. He accuses even his own angels. Strangely, the word is was capitalized in the biblical text by one of King James's scribes in a rush to become the best among us. As an alien seeking an example, I could think of Brad Pascal, but it's true of all of them. The great accuser. Conservatism seems in an amplified way under Trump, but to some extent before, to be a label that represents a group of people who have become over time overly adept at shooting things with wings. Being concerned with what you see is being responsible, a way of protecting yourself and loving your neighbor. Seeking accusations from a Filipino pig farmer on the internet is simply the easiest way for a lack of skill sets leaning back to force its relevance. Drapes to cover the absence of a remembrance. It seems to me that the baby boomer generation stopped learning as they went along for the presence of just remembering some time ago. The result is a pillar of starchy sadness for a president within my own context, But I think the example of Lot was referring to the ionization potential within a falling atmosphere through static abrasion protocol. I'm not saying they know through articulation what they are doing, but there does seem to be a push for amplifying the intuition for a resonance. My experience has been that where I'm going, we won't count time through the prism of duration with numbers. Duration, however, will have an impact on that reflection. August 22nd. EVE. I'm tired of having been so serious through the review of this thing, so in order not leave a misimpression for a warp drive personality of critique, I want to give you an example of the logic in terms of a meaningful way that I'm addressing Jesus's birth and what happened leading up to it. We have this scene with these guys showing up with a chest of gold and other things. Wise men and your pastor will point out that the Greek word is somewhere closer to magi. Now we know what? Is that an explanation for how they knew not only the timing but who he was and what his name would be? We know it would be a several-month journey and so would have taken place in summer. We know 3 old men in fine clothes and a chest of gold traveled through the desert on camels without incident, found audience with King Herod, then continued to follow the star to the manger after apparently getting lost. Where may we find the King of the Jews? Do you suppose they were surprised nobody knew? Was it just a backhanded announcement? An ego waiting to prevail itself on the community for some secret they couldn't possibly be aware of? Why the need for a dream to realize they may have upset Herod? Perhaps they made a mistake with such naiveness. Cost the lives of a lot of babies under 2, but they did find Jesus. Small price to pay. Here are your gifts. We'll be on our way. Thanks for coming. It's almost like a scene out of a Monty Python or Benny Hill skit or bit. How fucking clumsy, or was it an intention? It could have been just blind goodwill. After all, Christmas was coming. Perhaps they didn't research or even know where they were going, a euphoric anticipation for finally being part of the moment. They were so specific. The only thing they seemed not to know was where they were going. So they followed a star, but what happened when they reached Israel? Why start asking around? If the conditions of the star changed when they reached Israel, what happened after meeting Herod that would lead them to one specific manger? Such a specific event where the participants have such specific knowledge, being guided by a star, how would someone drop the ball like that? Maybe sometimes we can't anticipate their reactions, but now we know. Couldn't they have been warned in a dream before they met Herod? Before asking the question, then even after meeting him they still needed one. Was God reacting to a circumstance, or was it the subconscious of a genius with no street smarts? I mean, they were geniuses, right? What about him would be so impressive that he would be compelled to react swiftly with force against the possibility of their words? Superstition, boredom, were led to imply from the word magi sort of a mixed sensation of math and astrology, and therefore they figured it out. How so? Was there some equation, some constellation, some book they found that spelled it all out? Perhaps they were alchemists, and it was just a mix of all of it. What would compel someone to such a journey, for the 3 of them a suicide mission considering what they were carrying? Your pastor might provide some smartphone explanation for the magi following a star to a specific manger, seen by shepherds and sheep. Now we know. The math turned out accurate. Dudes had a lot of faith. For some reason. Perhaps our biggest problem is they have been explaining the magi to us without the magi being able to explain themselves. It says God hated astrologers, so were they evil always except this one day? Had a useful skill set. Maybe it wasn't in the stars or a book, but a mind that had somehow become capable of the experience. Why do we fit adult analytical capacity inside the South Park cutouts of a former memory? Is it because we are just reaching back for the sensation of memory? Is that why we call them plantations and not just prison camps? Anyway, Josephus mentions Herod but not his exercised capacity to kill the babies of his citizens. Is there any other memory of it outside of the Bible? It would seem like a worthy footnote to Herod's history and the history of Bethlehem. What is the importance of historical accuracy when what we are talking about is faith? What is the point of describing the biblical account as accurate historically, when what we are defending is the Kierkegaardian leap? We know at some point, as in the case of Herod or Donald Trump, our loyalty to the faith will be tested against the facts as a way of proving its truth. We emerge from church each Christmas to a blind oblivion of insight descending on the senses, a snow-covered path where we can wrap ourselves in the swaddling cloth of how we remembered it when we first learned it. We become like newborn babes ourselves for having participated again in the experience. It doesn't really matter because we already know what's important, and from the birth to his death in the same message, someone who could die in my place, experienced the consequence of my sins for me. The reason for his life and his birth in our memory, is to remember the point of his death. The opportunity it provided, to me. Us. Ground Control, to Major Tom. 1972. The resentment of having an explanation precede your every description, must be difficult to process. Does Tom Selleck look approvingly over your shoulder? Are you kind of like Tom Selleck, Major Tom? A private eye? A Ferrari? A mustached lost soul trying to figure it all out in a floral shirt? A nice pad with Higgins in Hawaii? How original. To attach to the sensational memory of a family, the knowledge of your salvation, a position waiting to be filled, a preformed expectation to someone else's creation in exchange for money. Confidence. Standing. Are you 50? You are. Successful.